Hey guys, so today we are going to be finishing up some chamber work and bowl work on this Nissan RB20NEO head. This is a project that I started earlier this year. It's just kind of on the side. It's a relatively special head in the RB world, as it's a RB20NEO. There's a lot of neat things about this head in comparison to, say, your standard RB20 DET head. We'll go through a couple of those things, but mainly I'm just going through and cleaning up the chamber and the bowls because they are actually pretty rough from factory. But today I'm going to be finishing up. I got 2 more cylinders left to do. I have pretty much mostly finished number 1 cylinder. 2, 3, and 4 are still unfinished. I need to go through and smoothen them up. But basically what I'm going through is I'm making these cylinders a lot more smooth. There is a pretty big step right there off of the seat. There's a massive step on the exhaust. I don't think it's as important on the exhaust to get rid of this step, but on the intake it's super important. So you can see that lip is pretty much all gone on the intake. The exhaust I'm not as too perfect with. I'm not so worried about it. I don't feel it is nearly as important as airflow going into the chamber. So the other thing is that I had gone through with the head gasket that we're using on this engine and doweled it up on here, and I had marked out the chamber. And this engine's got quite a bit of chamber lap there. You can see this line that I scribed right here versus the actual chamber. That's probably just about 1/10 of an inch. 100,000. So we're just going to go through and open everything up, make it a little bit smooth, make everything nice and pretty. The other thing to note is that this head has not yet been decked, so I'm going through and doing all my chamber work, all of my bowl work, and then we'll have it decked later on. Make sure everything's perfect. Make sure if I don't have any issues, or if I have a mess up or whatever, hopefully the decking can get most of it cleaned up. Okay, I've done just a little bit, removing the lip around all of the valves, and then I opened up the chamber just to my scribe line. Anyways, you probably could stop here. This is probably just a major improvement already upon the factory. How much, you can just see how much those are shrouded there. That's just, can't be good for horsepower. On this side, I haven't cleaned it off yet, but you can see that there is no more major line there. Now I do have a smaller bit. I'm going to go ahead and spend more time on this. You can see the shading of the light there, right there on the top of that exhaust port, and it's on the intake as well. You can see how shrouded the valve is there. I've always seen that smoothing out through there, so I don't see anything wrong with it. It's material that doesn't need to be there. Open it up, make it a little bit smoother, make it all nicer. So we're going to go ahead and use a smaller, more fine bit to get in here accurately without getting into the valve seat, and we'll clean that up. to go ahead and switch to the smaller bit, get in all the smaller, tighter areas. And I'll go through the bowls and I'll clean up the bowls, make sure they're all smooth and as nice as I can possibly make it. As I said, I don't want to take anything out that might hurt performance. All I'm doing is getting rid of sharp ridges. I know there's quite a bit of horsepower just in the ridges alone. As far as porting an RB20, I don't know if there's really much to gain from porting one of these and making the ports a better shape or anything. These valves are just so small to begin with. There's not really, I don't know if there's much more in these things port-wise. So I'm just taking rid of all the ridges. Pretty much just anything that I know will help a low lift number, a low lift CFM. Anything that will help low lift, I think is just going to be a massive gain across the board. It'll help the turbo spool up faster. It'll make it seem like it's more alive and energetic. So that's all I'm doing. Also, one of the things I'm really looking forward to this winter is we are going to be building an Atlas 3700. I've seen a lot of people do Atlas 4200s, turbo drift cars. I've seen they do stock limiter, naturally aspirated, drift cars, all sorts of stuff with Atlas 4200s. So we're going to be trying out the 5-cylinder, the Atlas 3700. They also make an Atlas 3500, but due to the way I'm kind of piecing together engine parts and stuff, it makes more sense to stick with the 3700. So yeah, I'm extremely excited about that. So it is one of these. We got one just sitting here. This is a mock-up motor that I'll be using. It had a terrible life. I'm not entirely sure what happened. I don't know if they ran water into the cylinders or something. The rods are bent and broken and all sorts of funny stuff happened with this thing, but I'll be using it just to mock up and make parts, intake, exhaust manifold, alternator brackets, power steering brackets, engine mounts, etc. Pretty interesting motor. It is definitely big. I will be putting it into my AE86, my Toyota Corolla. So it's definitely a bigger motor for that car. However, I would like to guess that this is still upon about the same weight as the RB that I just had in it this last season. Honestly, it didn't feel too bad with the RB. It felt pretty nice actually, so I'm looking forward to this. I know I'll have to make an oil pan for this system, or for this setup, because it's just going to be too tall this way. So if you're saying there was no crankshaft or anything coming out the front, I did go ahead and take all the internals out, including the cylinder wall. Yeah, this thing sat with water in the cylinders. So it's just, so this will be a very exciting build. Definitely a whole bunch of weird parts from other vehicles will end up inside of this motor just to make it work. We are going to be shooting for a fairly big number out of this. I would like to have it for a whole season, but I'd also like to figure out what's going to be the first thing to break. I would love to see some high RPMs out of this thing. I know the stock eliminator guys have gotten the 4200s up past 10,000 RPM. Those are in a drag racing application and they're not hitting limiter. So I know I won't be able to go up that high for sure, but I'm going to definitely go as high as I possibly can with this thing. And I'd like to get a pretty decent horsepower figure out of it as well. So we will be finding out the limit of this thing, and then trying to figure out how to make it stronger or how to make it better. I know some of you are thinking this is a weird engine to pick out of a Chevy Colorado or Chevy Canyon to go into a drift car. It's kind of an odd one, but the sound of a 5-cylinder, and then I believe they came in the Colorados and Canyons. You could also get them in manual, so I think it's going to save me a bit of time and money. It may be hard to source a transmission, but I'm hoping I can find one. So hopefully it's not too difficult. I'd like to use as much, as far as the running gear goes, I'd like to use as much of the Chevy stuff as possible and make it just as simple as possible. Like I said, I know I'll be putting a whole bunch of different parts in. I believe we'll be using Ford 4.6 rods, BQ37 VHR pistons, and then I'll have to get the crank machined as well for that. So yeah, it'll definitely be a mix of parts and stuff, and it's definitely a weird motor, but I also have had my fair share of weird motors and weird things that I've been doing. Yeah, there's just, pardon the mess, but there's junk everywhere, weird stuff everywhere. Okay, now I've got the last 2 cylinders roughed in. A key reason or a way to look at this, getting rid of that lip that is right there. As I said before, it helps low lift numbers, but I also want to believe that it goes ahead and helps high lift numbers as well. This valve on an RB20, the lobe really only lifts this valve maybe about this much, so it's honestly not a lot. That lip being up, some of them are 20 to 40 thousandths of a lip there. That lip being up that high, it kind of shrouds the entire valve, and it'll actually make, I feel like it'll make that cam act as a smaller cam. So getting rid of that lip there, that's all the way around these, like I said, 20 to 40 thousandths lip, that's a big lip there. I think will help just all throughout the entire range. But mainly, it's supposed to help, at least from what I've learned from other head porters, is that it really helps low lift numbers. Where the valve spends half of its time open is in the middle of its lift, which is that's the key area that you're looking for CFM if you want good power, is your low lift numbers, I think, are more important than your high lift. So with that lip being 20 to 40 thousandths off on your low lift number, it shrouds that valve that much more, and you've got almost no airflow. So by getting rid of that lip around there, you've got that much more. So that's the key reason why I believe that even though I don't have a flow bench or anything to test this, I think that all of these modifications to the chamber and the bowls are important regardless of a flow bench or not. It's just kind of common sense to head porting and chamber work. Okay, we got one chamber finished here. I got most of the bowls finished, but I left one unfinished. That way you could kind of see what I'm doing here. So like I said, the main thing that I'm doing with this entire head is I'm just cleaning up any rough edges. Casting flash, machining errors from factory, just simple things like that. I'm not wanting to change the shape of anything. Like I said, I do not have a flow bench. I don't have anything to justify any major differences that I want to make. So I'm not worrying about taking material out or changing the shapes of things. I'm just simply removing anything rough. You can take your finger across this entire thing now and not catch an edge or not cut yourself or anything. Before it was rough. You'd rub a rag through there, it'd rip the rag up. So anything sharp is going to take power away, Anything soft is going to make it a little bit nicer. Obviously you can ruin a port, you can ruin things by taking too much material away in places that you shouldn't. So that's why I said I'm not wanting to do that. I'm just wanting to get rid of sharp edges. So I'll go through here, zoom. So it's just smooth. You can even see in this area right here, I didn't take anything too much away. There's a bit of a lip there, and I don't want to smooth that up, because if I smooth it, I may actually hurt it. On this side, you can see that everything is rougher. There's nasty cast right in there. If we come to this side and focus, maybe you can see a machining error there. It cut into the bowl, and then there's a, can't really see it too much, but there's a pretty good lip there. Casting flash. There's just a lot of rough things in these bowls that is gonna take power away from it. So like I said, that's all we're doing, and we're just trying to get rid of anything that's rough in there and make it all smooth. Okay, now all of the chambers and the bowls are finished up. I just went outside and cleaned this thing up. After porting and grinding all this stuff, the guides will become full of metal. The whole head will become full of metal, so it's always a good thing to clean everything out, get everything as clean as possible, and then go ahead and lap the valves. That way there's no metal or anything in between the valve and the valve guide. You don't want to scratch anything or nick anything in there. So now that's all cleaned up, ready to go. I've got just a few valves left here to lap in. One of the main things to remember if you're porting a head like this, or porting a head, any head actually, is to always use like a pair of junk valves that you can set in here. That way when you're grinding the chamber up, you don't accidentally nick into your valve seat. Unfortunately, this is just a rare head, and it's got a smaller stem than everything else that I've got in my yard. I don't have anything that'll fit in there to protect it. So I just had to go through and be extremely cautious not to nick into the valve seats or anything. Same thing with going in through and doing the bowls. You just want to be as careful as possible and slow and take your time. Just be cautious. Always rest your hand on something and try to just grind in a direction that it's not going to just come out of your hand. So, but yep, we'll go ahead and lap these last valves in, make sure everything else looks good, just look over everything again, and then it'll be ready to go back together. Okay, just went outside and cleaned it all off. All the valves are lapped, everything's all done and ready just to get decked. So the head will probably end up sitting like this. I may reassemble the valves and everything just so everything stays in the same place and doesn't get lost. But yeah, all taken care of. We got all 6 done. We got 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All pretty. Okay, so that is one project all taken care of. We've got a whole bunch more stuff coming up this winter, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next weekend for more cool stuff.